We're going to talk about skill-based matchmaking and what it is, but in the background here, you're going to have a nice, lovely video of the first one is me playing against some cheaters. The second one is me getting stuck in leaving game forever. I constantly see people talking about skill-based matchmaking. What is skill-based matchmaking? Is it in Halo or not? These kind of things. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about kind of the basics. So we'll describe what skill-based matchmaking is and isn't. We'll talk about what those implementations look like inside of Halo. We'll talk about matchmaking, how that's a little bit different, and we'll ground everything out in examples that exist in the game that we know and love today in MCC. So right out the bat, what is skill-based matchmaking? So skill-based matchmaking is an attempt to make games fair. So we're going to look at all of the individual players in a lobby. We're going to look at their skills. We're going to do some averaging, and we're going to say, this team looks like it's got a pretty fair shot against this other team, and so that looks like a good match. That's only looking at the numbers. So think of it like a skill curve or a curve of a normal distribution. So by the way, we're going to talk some statistics. Don't worry, there's not a test at the end of this. Anything that I say, I'll put a nice little graphic because having a little visual thing on the screen here will help quite a bit. So you don't have to imagine a normal distribution. I'll put one on the screen, but a normal distribution is basically if we're looking at a skill curve or we're looking at the probability of something happening, most things fall in the middle. So the reality of life is most things are average. So most things will fall in the middle of the curve. So if you think of you have really, really good players, you have really, really bad players, and then most people are going to fall somewhere between those two. So skill-based matchmaking, we're putting a number on how good you are at the game. So let's look at that. So skill-based matchmaking, okay, we're trying to make fair games using numbers. Now, the one that Halo actually uses is a system known as TrueSkill. So TrueSkill was developed for Halo, which is kind of fun. Microsoft made it using a bunch of ideas about how can we make games fair for players. So they came up with a bunch of they did a bunch of research, did a bunch of analytics, and found a model that works. It's somewhere in between or similar to how ELO works in chess. So we want to look at a player's skill, match them with players of similar skill, but they do a little bit more analysis. So TrueSkill has been in Halo since Halo 2. It's what's known as a Bayesian analysis. You don't really need to know what that means, but basically just know that as we play our games out, the system is going to look at you and it's going to say, you did really good in the past, so I'm expecting you to do better in the future. And so the next game it puts you in, it's going to raise your rating a little bit, and then it's going to say, oh, you did kind of bad in this game. This game was too hard, so now let's kind of lower things back down. And so another way that you can think about this in a real life example is if you go to the doctor and you tell the doctor, like, hey, I have a bunch of, I keep having headaches. Well, the doctor, if they don't know much about you, they might just say, well, maybe you need to drink some more water, go on more walks. Maybe you need some more sunshine. But then maybe you go to the doctor and you've been going there for a long time and you tell the doctor, hey, I have a history of headaches in my family. So everyone in my family constantly gets headaches. Well, now they have a little bit more information. They're going to assess that differently. That's all that's happening with skill-based matchmaking with TrueSkill. I have some cool graphics that show exactly how TrueSkill 1 works. TrueSkill 1 was kind of expanded on in TrueSkill 2.0, and that TrueSkill 2.0 is going to show basically some more parameters that are taken into account. So skill-based matchmaking, again, we're putting a number on what it is, your performance. So you're getting a rating. Are you an A class? Are you a B class, C class, etc.? Where do you fall on our distribution? Then there's matchmaking. So matchmaking is going to take your MMR, your matchmaking rating, or the skill-based matchmaking value that it's come up with you through TrueSkill. It's going to take that as an input to match you against other players. So we're not only looking at what is your rating. So are you a B class player? Great. We can't just put you in a game with strictly other B class players unless there's just a bunch of B class players around. So this is where this model starts to kind of fall apart for MCC because we just don't have a ton of players. So if you think about a skill curve and then you think about the population of the game, there's just not enough people to fill the averages in between. So if matchmaking takes into account a bunch of different parameters, which I'll put some of the parameters on the screen, right? So it's going to take into account what game modes have you selected, what devices have you selected? So are you playing on a controller? Are you playing mouse and keyboard? Are you on Xbox? Are you on PC? What is the actual skill level across your group? And then what does your latency look like? Are you blocking servers? All of those things factor in as well. So when players start to manipulate all of these values, what we find is really, really good players will often end up in lobbies with really, really bad players. And that's strictly because if you're a 0.98 and there's not a bunch of other 0.98s currently searching, the game can decide to either leave you in queue for a super long time. This is what happens in ranked, right? If you queue ranked and you're a 40, you're not going to find a game for a super long time, if ever. Whereas in a social environment, we're going to take those things as inputs, and then maybe we're going to kind of relax those requirements as time goes on. So yeah, we're looking for a really, really good game. We want high skilled players to match you against. There's not a lot out there. So we're going to start to wiggle the requirements around and try to find you a team of people that get you towards a quote unquote winnable game or something that we think is a good experience. And this system learns over time, not just from you. So it's going to assign you a number, and as you play, if you do good, that number goes up, and then you match with better players. If you do poorly, it might go down. But then also, it's doing that across the entire population of players. So it's not just looking at how are you doing, it's also looking at, hey, I put these people in a game and it didn't really look like they had a good time. So how do we adjust the next match to make sure that doesn't happen? So now we can talk about a real example. So I'll put up on the screen some examples of what an actual matchmaking ticket looks like. Prior to this, or at this kind of same time, I'll show you the flow of what matchmaking does look like. So we're at a particular point when we're talking about this matchmaking ticket, but I submit a ticket and I say, I want to play, I don't know, Halo 3 SWAT, or I want to play Halo 1, Halo 2, and Halo 3 SWAT. So I just have a bunch of stuff in. So the matchmaker sees all of the selections that I've made. It makes a ticket for me and it waits to see if it can find other people kind of with similar selections on their end. And I'll put some real examples of those values here. So if I search in SWAT, it uses my same 4v4 rating. So this is actually important. I should cover this too. So each individual hopper in MCC has a different value for your group and personal skill percentages. So if you're really, really good at 4v4, but you never play 1v1, your 1v1 number is going to be really low compared to your 4v4, compared to your 2v2, your AV8, etc. So as you play more in each of those things, your value goes up. In 4v4, my value is a 0.9998, which is out of 1, so very close near the top of the curve. If I go on to play 1v1, you can see my value here. I'm a 0.446. I'm smack dab right near the middle because I just don't play this game type really at all. These are the types of things that are being taken into account when players start to smurf, when players start to use accounts that aren't their regular account, because matchmaking doesn't really know what to do with your rating. You're telling me that, hey, I don't know who you are, and so I put you in a game with really easy players, but then you got 50 kills. Well, it kind of seems like maybe I need to put you into a different lobby. So these are the types of things that are all being factored into our analysis of what kind of game should we be putting this person in. So big picture, skill-based matchmaking has been in Halo. We've looked at some examples of inside of MCC, what those actual values look like. What is the feedback that I'm giving the system? And then the reality is there's just not enough players to give us really good matches all the time. If you're an average player, the reality is you're going to probably end up in a lot more of those average matches. But if you're a really good player who's been playing for a long time, or you're just a brand new player that the system doesn't know much about, those two ends are going to meet much more often just because of the population. If we had 1,000,000 players a day, 800,000 people that are all in the middle of the curve could all play each other, and they'd really never experience someone that's on the top end of the curve or the bottom end of the curve. But when we have a few thousand and maybe we're split down to a few hundred in each particular game searching, the reality is really good players get matched with brand new or bad players, and it leads to a worse experience. The system was designed for millions of people playing with tens or hundreds of thousands of people active at any one time. And so our math and our statistics kind of starts to break down with our smaller sample size. hopefully this has taught you a little bit about TrueSkill. Again, I'm a visual person, so I try to put a bunch of stuff on the screen. Skill-based matchmaking is real. Yes, it can be kind of painful, but when we know the math and we know the system that's going on around us, it can help us to just identify that, hey, the matchmaking system really is doing the best that it can. It's taking these values, it's doing things. It can always be tweaked. Systems can always be better, but the system's not necessarily fighting against you. We're just playing a pretty unpopular game in 2025. So thanks for listening. Hope you learned something. Bye.